Hello, we'll give everybody a few minutes to kind of join in, kind of doing a mic test. Hopefully, everybody will be able to hear me. Let's see. Just doing a test. Is anybody there? Can anybody hear me yet? Hello? Hello? Hello, mic test. 1, 2, 3. Mic test. 1, 2, 3. Hello? Test, test. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think we'll have a great, interesting time today. Hopefully, everybody has their questions together today. If you have a question about dog training or anything in that aspect, can you please give us a question so we can start this? If you cannot, if you don't have a question, that's fine. We'll just go ahead and start talking in just a little bit. We'll give everybody a little bit of time to get on. Okay, well, if anybody has a question, I'm more than happy to answer them. It's 6:30 now. I think I'll kind of just start talking, and as questions come in, we can go ahead and get those questions answered. So the first thing else we will talk about is I have a lot of questions typically about people calling me about puppies, and people don't understand in general the understanding of a puppy. What a puppy is basically a toddler, or an infant, basically, that the dog doesn't understand much. It's our job as owners and people to show the dog how to act, what to do, and to correct as if a mama dog would. So a lot of people don't understand a crate can be a great thing when used correctly. Uh, we always want to make sure we can use the crate correctly when needed. Some people don't have crates and refuse to use crates. It's understandable. People look at them like dog or not. Again, if anybody has any questions, please just go ahead and type them in and we'll get them answered. So, crates can be a great aspect of training. I use corrections, but corrections can be the form of the word no can be a correction. It doesn't have to be anything harsh. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy. You don't have to hurt a dog for any reason for a correction. So there's a lot of different aspects of that. But again, like I said, there's a lot of people who just don't understand a puppy and the puppy mindset. When you get a puppy, everybody thinks, "Oh, look the cute puppy, look the cute baby." And I have to remind everybody they're not babies. If we start thinking of them as human babies, we start to have some problems. We start thinking, and if we humanize the animal to the point we start treating them as a human. Yes, I know it sounds cruel, but a dog is still a dog. They can be our best friend. They can be the best thing we have in the world. But if you don't nurture and reward and correct their behavior from a puppy, you get a unsocialized, crazy dog. When you have a puppy, again, socialization is key. So if I have a puppy, I'm going to socialize it as much as possible with people, places, and things. Most people think, oh, well, socialization, I'm just going to throw my dog in with another dog. No, that's not socialization. That is teaching a dog to learn for itself again. We want to be able to show the dog how to react around another dog. Not just, hey, here's a puppy, play, have fun. You can't do that. They're going to start developing habits from each other and developing bad habits. You always want to make sure that you develop the correct habits. Again, a habit is anything. And from a young puppy, a habit can be imprinted on where it's even harder to get out of the behavior, if it's ever even possible to get out of the dog's behavior for the rest of its life. So puppy training is a vital key to all of our adult dogs. Now, if you miss the puppy stages and you do things like that, we can go ahead and do things differently. Here we go. We have a question. Ryan wants to know how to get the dog to stop jumping on him. Well, the first thing to get a dog to stop jumping on you is, one, you can't be calling the dog to you. You want to take a step forward. Every time the dog jumps on you, you want to walk into the dog. Our first instinct as humans is to walk backwards. When we walk backwards, to take a step back, you're giving the dog more opportunity to jump on you, and you've turned it into a game. We want to make sure that we don't turn it into a game. So we walk towards them, and we take away the fact that they can't jump on us anymore. And in time, it gets much better to where they stop jumping completely. We have another question. My 7-year-old seems to still want to mouth the cats. Okay. So this question, I'm assuming that the dog still likes to kind of mouth the cats and play with the cats. Well, to start off, the dog must not have been socialized correctly around the cat if it's still being mouthy, or not socialized correctly, not taught how to react around the cat to begin with. If a dog is running or chasing a cat or being mouthy with a cat, yes, there's times where it's just play, but it's not always play. And cats and dogs do play differently. We have to slowly correct the dog again. So if the dog's being mouthy at a cat, we have to correct it right then and there. It's just like if I have two dogs or a cat and a dog together, when I start seeing that there is a problem, say the dog's, like you said, the dog's being mouthy towards the cat, I'm going to correct it right then and there. A correction, again, doesn't have to be anything harmful. You don't have to hit the dog. You don't have to spray it with water. You can say no. You can make a loud noise. Something that you have to be consistent with, though. So every time the dog does it, you have to be consistent and correct it right then and there. So the dog starts realizing that's not acceptable in his life and its life anymore. We want to make sure that the cat understands it too, but again, the cats are a little bit different. If I have a dog that's being mouthy, I'm going to correct it each time it does it. By correcting it each time it happens, the dog understands that this is not acceptable and it's not going to happen at all anymore. But again, it's going to take time. It's going to take consistency. But you have to be the alpha role for the dog to get. If you're not the alpha of the dog's or higher in the pack mentality of the dog's not going to have the respect you need for the correction. So you'd have to go ahead and start all over again from scratch, basically, if you're not the alpha, and get in that higher pack mentality so that you can control them a lot better. But we want to make sure, again, correct each time the dog does it. Consistency and structure is the biggest things every dog needs out there. And it's create a different dog with a little bit of effort, a little bit of time, and consistency. We have another question. What is your best advice to stop barking when crated? And that's sometimes a difficult one. It all depends on the dog in general. Some dogs... Okay, so some dogs we have to use tools, some dogs we don't. I like to start off with tools. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore the dog completely. Every time that dog's in that crate, I will ignore it. We will not pay any attention to the dog. Because what's happening is any attention is good attention, is what it wants. So negative attention, bad attention, all attention is good attention to the dog. So if the dog's barking and whining in the crate and just won't stop, and we give it attention, or we start fussing at it, or we start giving other aspects of its life that it kind of needed, like, I want the attention. I want her to look at me. We're creating the behavior to even be worse. So by typically ignoring the dog, they're going to get a lot better. Yes, sometimes it doesn't work as fast as we would want. Sometimes it doesn't work as quickly as we need. And sometimes we have to resort to tools or other things. But honestly, my best advice for any person that's not a professional is to go ahead and ignore the dog when it's in the crate. And only give the dog attention when it's in there calmly. When it's in the crate nice and calm, then you take it out the crate. Because at some point also the dog realized that probably barking in the crate, it was released. It was able to get out the crate. So it's socialized or understood wise that, oh, I bark, I get out. Not, oh, I sit calmly and wait and I'm patient and then I can get out. They gave it a whole other aspect of barking in the crate. So again, we want to make sure we're nice, we're calm. The dog will read you if you're not careful. There've actually been new studies in dogs, even for protection dogs and things, that they've putting three decoy trainers out. All three of them are in bite suits, and they'd look at the handler, and one of them would think negative, derogatory, mean thoughts towards that handler. And when the dog was released, that was the one that the dog would go to, because they were trained in our brain chemistry, in our body chemistry. When we think happy thoughts, we project a different smell in our body chemistry, and the dogs can actually smell it. So they know when we're stressed, they know when we're having issues. So we want to also look at the dog and only mess with them when we're nice and calm and we can be assertive, not when we're anxious or aggravated or frustrated because the dog's barking in the crate, because the dog's doing all these other behaviors we don't want. We have to always try to create a nice, calm environment so that way the dog can understand that, oh, I don't have to be stressed out. I don't have to have the worry. But again, a lot of the dogs, of any dog's anxiety and other behavioral atmospheres is there because they don't have a clear alpha role or a clear pack mentality. A dog nowadays that is stressed, that can't handle being an alpha, that we've domesticated them so much they cannot handle it at all. So we've created our own monster in a way. We've also gone ahead and taken these dogs, and we want these dogs to be great with us. We want these dogs to be wonderful. But we kind of have to be that way for us. So for us, we have to be that alpha role. We have to be head. We have to be in control. Control doesn't mean the dog has to do everything when I say it as a military person would do it right that second. If I tell a dog a simple thing, like if I tell a dog to sit, I'm not going to go sit, sit, sit until it sits. We take that one thing and turn it into a 5-word command. That one word just became 5 words in the dog's mind. It won't sit till the 5th time. So in all of our commands when training and everything, we want to make sure the dog understands to make its own decision. A lot of trainers out there will tell you, oh, well, we have to do this, this, and this, and we have to get it done this quickly. I'm not in a quick shot. I don't want to quickly train a dog sometimes. Sometimes I want them just to make up their own mind. So if I have a dog, say, if I say sit, and this dog's like thinking, I don't want to sit. I don't want to deal with you. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to count to 5. So 5 seconds, basically. And I'm going to look at the dog, and I'm going to say no, which is a correction. I'm going to say their name, have them look at me, and say sit. And sometimes what happens is, before you ever get to that 5-second time, the dog goes ahead and sits on their own. Now, when you count for 5 seconds, don't get me wrong, everybody, it is stressful. That's the longest 5 seconds you will ever feel because you're just sitting there. One Mississippi, two Mississippi. It takes forever. And you're just anticipating and anxious for this dog to sit. And you want to just bark and jump and fuss at the dog and make them sit. Yes, after the second time, if the dog's not sitting, I'm gonna give a tug on the leash. I'm gonna push their butt down with 2 fingers. I'm gonna do everything else I have to, so the dog understands. But again, the best way for stopping barking is to ignore the dog. The best way to get a dog to stop jumping on you is to walk into it every time it jumps on you. You also can't be hyper and wanting the dog to come up and jump on you. You can't be looking at the dog and using a lot of baby talk. All what I mean by baby talk is, oh, it's okay, you're a good boy. What's happening is you're exciting the dog, and they're going to have a tendency to jump on top of you and jump on you. Any dog that jumps on you or puts a paw on you in general, they are dominating you. They're jumping to create themselves as a bigger image, and you're making them much bigger. They're making themselves bigger to say, hey, I'm in control. Or they put paws on you, and they're like, hey, you're mine with that paw on top of you. We don't want to be that way. That's one of the reasons I don't allow dogs to jump on me. I don't allow them to put their paws on me at all. It's not happening unless I tell the dog to. That's the only time I allow it. Let's see, what was the other one we had? We had one that was, it was the cats. How can you, I don't know if I touched on it, how can I help him learn not to do that? Okay, so again, to create a behavior that you want from correcting another one is a negative and a positive reward. So the whole back to the cat part where the cat was being the dog was being mouthy to the cat, and the cat doesn't appreciate that type of play anymore. Well, the dog has to understand that's not acceptable. So we give a harsh no. We get the dog's attention. We say no, and we say the dog's name. We get their attention. And we give them a whole other behavior to do. Whether it be sit, whether it be come, whatever it is, we give them a different behavior than what they're doing. Another thing that I love to do, that I'd love to teach, is called the place command. It's one of the best commands you probably will ever have or use in your life with a dog. Actually, I have a dog who's in place right now. She's on. I use beds. I use cots. Any place command could be anything that's different from the surrounding area. That place command is great because it'll help you keep the dog under control in a way without having to be crated all the time. So if I have a dog in place, I can put them in this one spot wherever I choose is where the place is. It's not bed, it's not kennel, it's place. It's wherever I choose for the dog to be. It's on a picnic table or whatever. The dog can pretty much just stay there. But they also realize that's a comfort place. They're fine. They don't have to worry about half the stuff anymore that they had to begin with. Okay, another question. Best way to introduce a big dog to guests arriving at your home? Oh, that is a good one. Give me 1 second. Okay, the best way to introduce a big dog is basically the best way to introduce any dog. When a guest comes in the home, first off, the guest needs to ignore the dog completely. Because the more attention that the person shows to the dog, the hyper the dog will be, or the more protective a dog will be. You want to make sure that the people are nice and calm. They're just ignoring the dog. Everything's fine. You're talking to the people. The dog's right over there. Nothing to worry about. Because what you're doing is you're showing the dog that they don't have to worry about the people coming in the house because you're there. That you are the one who, that you are the one that that has everything under control to the point to where they know they can trust you thoroughly. By trusting you, you're alpha. You're everything to that dog. But if they're stressed or have issues with other people coming in the home, you need to work on that relationship a little bit too. So when you tell the dog no, it means no. And that's not acceptable again. We want to make sure that the dog understands its role in the pack mentality and that you're in charge. So we're going to make them sit. We're going to let them ignore the dog. Just ignore the dog completely. Go on about your daily routine when the dog's in sit. And after everything's calm, the dog's nice and calm, then the guest can kind of greet the person and say, the dog, and say, hey, good dog, or pet him or something else like that in that way. I wouldn't use treats because you're just rewarding they're telling the dog it's okay to be stressed. And what's happening is I've had recently, we had a couple that had a dog that came in, the people came into the house and they're throwing treats at the dog, trying to get the dog to say, hey, everything's okay. We want the dog to understand that the people are okay. And this dog was anxious and barking and having other issues. Well, what they're doing is they're giving the dog food for barking and fussing and trying to protect basically against the person giving the food. And then they're going ahead and telling the dog, oh, it's okay, it's okay. They're comforting the dog. By comforting the dog as a human, we're telling the dog that, hey, it's okay. Everything's okay. It's what we're saying. But what the dog's hearing is, you got it. You good. You be afraid. This is what you're supposed to do. Keep doing it. You are rewarding the behavior again by giving a quick. So if we have a dog that's stressed or something else, we're going to give them a quick no, give them a whole other behavior, and have them do that behavior until they're nice and calm, and then they can greet a guest correctly. I think we had another question come in. My shepherd is very dog aggressive. She barks and lunges at other dogs. She barks at dogs on TV, and she barks and lunges at the window. Oops, sorry, lost it. When the dog walks past the house. What are a few things I can do to stop this behavior? Sometimes I can redirect, but it's not easy. Braun, that's a good one. There are several different strategies when it comes to an aggressive dog. The problem is it depends on the dog, honestly, on how aggressive and how they actually are. Now, this particular dog, if that dog aggressive, something's happened to it in the past to where it was taught that other dogs were not okay, or it has such a high protection drive that it is trying to protect against all other dogs. This is a more difficult way or a dog to deal with sometimes. I would suggest, again, you have to develop more of an alpha role. And alpha roles start with training, and training the proper way, not how do I put this? You can't just use treats all the time to get an alpha role out of your dog. You have to be able to have the control without the reward. And sometimes basic leash pressure. So if I put pressure on a leash, for them to realize how to diffuse it, is they have to, say if I pull straight up, it gives them pressure on the neck. It makes them uncomfortable. So they sit down, they put their butt on the ground, and they stretch out their neck, and I release the pressure. Without ever saying a word, I'm teaching the dog to sit. What's happening is the dog's understanding that this pressure is uncomfortable and that they have to listen to me. So again, when a dog's barking, we have to try to catch, when they're in this aggressive state, we have to try to catch it before that happens. So if you can catch it before it happens, say, there's a dog coming down the street. The dog doesn't know yet or have that incline to get to the aggressive stages yet. We're going to go ahead and we're going to correct. We're going to have a leash on the dog. We're going to tell them no and make them sit. And as the dog's going by the window, we're going to, again, keep them in a sit-stay. We're not going to say it's stay, but we're going to make them sit. Sit is a temporary stay. So we're going to make them sit. And they're going to stay sitting the entire time. It's going to take some time, but you have to, again, have the alpha role relationship before that can fully go on the correct way. I would suggest you could also start on it with, say, the TV, because we can always look on stuff on TV and know that it shows with dogs on it barking, so we can correct it then and make them sit and make them be calm on the side of us. And as time goes by, you're developing that behavior. I hope this helps. If you have other problems, or something else more in depth, uh, contact me, and we can make a phone call or discuss a little bit more in depth. Let's see, another one. My friend took her dog to doggy daycare, and when she picked him up, they suggested she medicate her dog because he was too excitable around other dogs. What would you suggest? He is a 4-year-old pitty mix. Okay. There are a lot of dog daycares out there that actually suggest medicine. There's a lot of vets out there that suggest medicating the dog as well. And all these places don't know how to deal with the behavior. So it's just like, I say, if I have a 2-year-old, which I almost 2-year-old, and she is crazy, teething, going cuckoo because she's teething, it's bothering her, and she's fussy, and she needs a nap. I'm not going to sit here and medicate the dog for that. I'm not going to sit here and medicate the dog because it's too excitable around other dogs. To me, that is just stupidity at its best. What I would do is, in training, I would teach this dog calmness. By calmness, and calmness starts the second it walks out the crate. The second you feed the dog, you start with calmness, develop that way. If some people call it steadiness, if you've been in a hunting dog area, I call it calmness for all the other ones. I want a calm dog. I don't want a dog that's always excitable. So what I would suggest is, the second a dog comes out the crate, I open the door. If they try to walk out that crate, I'm closing the door. I want the dog open until I go ahead and get the dog. I call the dog. So the dog cannot come out the crate unless I call it. It's teaching the dog that, one, it can't be too excitable every time it comes out of a crate or a doorway. We want to also go ahead and make sure that when we feed the dog, we're going to go ahead and pick up the food bowl kind of high to where they're looking at it and have them sit. And we're going to bring the food bowl down. And every time we get it to the ground, closer to the ground, if the dog jumps up, I'm going to pick up the bowl. Until I can put that bowl all the way on the ground and the dog's not moving until I say their name and they can go get it. It's developing that calmness in that aspect. And then once we get those two things down, we can kind of throw a little bit of another dog in the mix periodically to kind of show the dog that that's not acceptable. We're using that sit as the behavior we want, again, because it's an easy one for most people to do. Is just tell their dog sit and have the dog sit. So we get the dog sitting and we calm them down. And they learn that they can't be totally excitable like that. They have to be nice and calm. And then you're going to have a whole different dog to begin like the one you had in the beginning. Because what happens is that one in the beginning was crazy. It was just excitable. It was fun. It was crazy. You're still going to have a fun dog. You're still going to have a very excitable dog when it's appropriate. So it gives that dog a little bit more stability. So we have another one. Rougarou is getting and continues to jump on people. What is the technique or habit that the whole family can do to break this? Okay. So again, we're going to walk. When a dog jumps on us, we're going to walk into the dog. Everybody. We're going to tell the dog no and walk into it. So every time this dog jumps, it's going to jump on us. We're going to walk towards it, into it, and say no and walk into it. So it's going to jump on us, so we're going to say no and walk. Or actually, you could, instead of saying no, here's a better one. You'll say off. Because most people do this part wrong, is they'll say down. Down is lay down. Off is get off of something. So we're going to go ahead and tell Rougarou, take off and walk into it. Off and walk into it. So that the way the dog understands that it is not acceptable at all to jump, period. When it comes to adults versus kids, the dogs are typically less likely to jump on the adult. They still will. But once we start doing this technique, they stop. So when it comes to kids, we're going to go ahead and have to slow them down, the kids a little bit. And when the dog jumps, and if it's not working for the kids, as a parent, we have to go up to that dog, grab him by the collar, say off, and make them sit as much as possible in the instance. If the dog jumps and is already on the other side of the room, it's too late to correct it. We have to do it right then and there. So if the dog's jumping on the kid and if the kid's walking into it and it's not getting off, we're going to go ahead and reach down, grab the collar, tell the dog off, and make the dog sit. So again, it understands how to react in that instance. Okay, the other one. What if the dog jumps on you from behind? That's always a tricky one. So if a dog's jumping on you from behind, they're also going to jump on you in the front. But once you got me. Okay, so if a dog's jumping on me from behind, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to correct it. I'm either going to walk backwards towards it. Again, I'm going to tell it off. Or I'm going to turn around. I'm going to grab the dog, again, by the collar. Let's see if I have a collar somewhere around here. 1 second. I'm going to show you a different technique. That is a very good one. Hold on 1 second. Okay, this is something I usually save for my clients. But if I'm going to go ahead, this is to say the dog isn't in here, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to reach down. I'm going to stick my thumb under and my fingers this way. And I'm going to grab the collar. I'm going to take my wrist. Let's make it a good image. And I'm going to bend my wrist out. So that way when the dog's here, he can't snap, he can't bite me or anything else. He's stopping. He can't get to my arm because it's bent. And it's up against his head right there. But I'm going to grab it. I'm going to say no. I'm going to prop that wrist out. I'm going to make him sit. And it's a great correction so that the dogs understand what to do. But again, when they jump on you from behind, it has to be corrected. They're still trying to dominate you and say that they're in control. A dog dominating a person is never good. Never. We want to make sure we nip that in the bud. So every time a dog puts a paw or jumps on you, we have to correct it. Whether it be walking into the dog, whether it be saying off and grabbing it by the collar and making it sit. And that way the dog understands sitting is what we want. So we make the dog sit, and we go ahead and then we praise the dog for sitting. But every time it jumps on us, we're going to go ahead correct by either walking into it or grabbing the collar. And then after it's sitting there nice and calm, we'll pet it and tell it good boy, good girl. But we have to make sure we give it a reward in the end, say this is what we want, and the correction of saying this is what we don't want. So in other words, we're telling the dog this is acceptable and this is not acceptable. We just have to make sure that we're consistent. And hopefully if the dog's jumping on the back of you, it's not a big dog because it can't hurt. Let's see. So all the questions we've had so far. Does anybody else have any? If you have any more questions, or if you just recently joined in, please ask the questions, and we'll answer as much as we can, and the best we can. So we've talked about dogs jumping. We've talked about barking, aggressively barking. We've talked about meeting new people. We've talked a lot about different things on here. We always want to make sure that we respect the dog and the dog respects us. We want to make sure that our relationship basis is not based on food all the time. It's not always based on just pure praise. That it is based on respect. It is based on corrections and praise. So that way that every dog out there knows that we are in control, that we're not its complete master, but we are in charge of it, and they listen to us. So what I tell a lot of people out there in this world is that dogs are not babies. They're not. I mean, I don't care if it's a puppy. I don't look at any dog as a baby. I look at them as teenagers. And most of y'all might laugh when y'all hear that. What happens is if I look at a dog as a teenager, and if I look at a teenager, I expect to tell the teenager to do something one time, and I expect them to go do it. But if I tell that to a baby, I don't expect them to go do it. So a dog is a teenager. I expect to tell the dog to sit one time, and I expect it to sit. I expect to tell the dog off one time. I expect it to do it. So if you put your mindset as if the dog's a teenager, you can train a dog much better and get yourself in the correct mindset. Because honestly, most people in general don't understand that our minds, when dealing with a dog, plays a huge part of the entire scenario. We always want to make sure that the dog understands things, we understand things, that we're nice and calm and we can deal with them correctly. If you are frustrated or aggravated, put the dog up. Don't even go play with it. Don't mess with it. Where you're going to teach it bad behaviors. You can teach it, oh, I can get away with it with stuff because the owner is frustrated, or, oh, I can only have to listen when they're frustrated. We want them to listen at all times, no matter what. And honestly, a lot of people out there, when they're completely frustrated, sometimes they don't want to deal with the dogs. Sometimes we do. Sometimes the dog will actually help us calm us down. If that's a different scenario, if the dog's the type of dog that's loving and wants to come cuddle with you when you're frustrated, that's fine. But if you're aggravated and you're trying to train a dog or try to do something else, put the dog up. Don't even attempt it, because you're only going to hurt yourself more and hurt the dog more and put the dog further behind in this respect mentality. So again, we don't want to talk a lot of baby talk to dogs, because there's a study a while back that showed that the more baby talk you talk to the dog, the less the dog respects you in the pack mentality. Which is one of the reasons dogs have some issues with kids sometimes, because especially when the toddlers, they don't talk very clearly, they're high pitched, they're more baby talk. Yes, it excites them, it gets them better, but we can always go ahead and get things situated better. Okay, here's another couple more questions. After I get home from a hitch, the dog urinates when I give her any attention, particularly if I stand over her. Okay, that's because you're intimidating the dog. When I greet a dog, and a lot of dogs, when they're excited or they have a submissive urination. So what happens is you reach over the dog, you're doing a threatening gesture. If you look at that dog straight in the eyes, it's a threatening gesture to the dog. So every time I meet a new dog, I have sunglasses on. They can't see my eyes. They can't tell that I'm looking at theirs. But again, I'm also not going to approach them and stand over them at first either. I'm going to let them come up to me, and I'm going to reach underneath, and I'm going to pet them under their chin. But by taking my hand and putting them over their heads, it's more of a threatening gesture. And when you're a big guy like I am, you reach over or you're towering over the dog, it can be a very threatening gesture towards them. We want to make sure that it's not threatening, that we kind of do it on their terms, and the urination stuff should either decrease or go away, depending on the dog and the person a lot of the time. Okay, another question. When introducing a new dog to another dog in the home, I heard it was good to walk them on leash, one person walking one and the other person walking the other, while another dog walking the other. Oh, okay. Is it best to walk them side by side with lots of space in between, or one in front of the other in like a single line? Okay, so that's a good question. So when you're introducing a new dog to what I'm guessing is to the home, and there's already an existing dog there. I love this topic because a lot of people don't realize this. So if I have to introduce one dog to another, one of the first things I'm going to do is one dog's going to go in a crate in the middle of the living room. The other one is going to get a little bit of freedom to walk around. And then I'm going to swap it. So the one that has the freedom goes in the crate, and the other one walks around. What we're doing is we're getting the dogs used to the same scent, to each other's scent, without ever having physical contact. If we have that physical contact, at first, you're more liable for a fight. because of territory. You're more liable because the dogs don't know each other at all. What if they're not friendly towards the other dog? Not all dogs like each other either. But it's best to do it this way at least for a couple of days. And then again, yes, they still don't go in the same room together yet, without one being in a crate. We go ahead and we take the dogs, and I would take them for a walk. The one that was there first. You have two people. You're right. They have two people. So the dog that was there first walks ahead with one person. The second dog walks behind with lots of space. And I mean, this goes on for about 3 days to a week. As days go on, you start getting closer and closer together. And once the dogs start getting closer and closer together, then, and as long as they're okay with everything and everybody else, then you walk them side by side. And then you can start getting them used to each other better loose in the house. But you want to make sure that all other steps were taken correctly to get them accustomed to each other and accustomed to each other's sense. And just so we show them if there is an issue, again, you have to correct and show them a different behavior to do. But we want to make sure that we get them in that aspect of one behind the other for a little while and then side by side. Again, you put one in a crate inside the house and the other one has freedom in the house. And then you reverse it. The other one goes in the crate and the other one has freedom. You're not tormenting the dog. You're not having issues. You're creating a better environment for each animal in the home so that you don't have the issues for later. I want to thank everybody for coming on so far too. You have all had some very good questions. Let's see. So let's see. If anybody has any more questions, I'd love to answer them. I think I've answered all of the ones so far. If I didn't give you the answer that you want, let me know either in here or send us a message afterwards, and maybe we can help you out a little bit more. Let's see. So yeah, we always, like I said, we just want to make sure that if you do have to correct the dog, you correct and then you praise. You want to make sure the dog can make up its own mind. I'll be perfectly honest. I was one of the first ones. When I started, I would correct the dog, and I just wanted to do it right then and there, and I wanted it to happen now. As time went on, I realized, yes, I was getting the results, but the dogs weren't happy anymore. And I would like a happy dog. I don't want one that's moping around because it's scared all the time or having issues. I want one that's happy and tails wagging and just ready to go, but listens. So now if you develop a different outlook on it and you want the dog to make the correct decision, we always want to have the dogs make up their own minds. Because if we don't let them make up their own minds, all of our training is really not going to last. We want the training to last a lifetime, not just 6 months to a year. We want it the rest of their lives for them to understand, to understand that they made this decision. They're doing a great job. Don't forget to give your dogs a good boy or a good girl every once in a while. A little bit of verbal praise sometimes goes a very long way. We want to make sure that they have a little bit understanding that they're doing the right thing. It's just like you or me. If we go to work every day and we're just hustling the grind and hustling and working our booties off and just it's not getting where we want it. We know we're doing a great job. We know we're doing things right, but it doesn't feel like anybody appreciates it. And then one day the boss comes up and says, "Hey man, you're doing a great job. Thank you." Your whole outlook changes. You're like, okay, I know for a fact I'm doing something right. Let's continue doing it. We want to make sure that we do the same things for our dogs. Okay, another question just came in. I was late coming on here. What's your opinion on giving dogs meds for anxiety? I plan on boarding my pit mix, but he has a lot of anxiety and high energy, and sometimes other dogs do not like that. Well, I don't always like to medicate. there are some dogs in some scenario situations that do possibly need to be medicated if they have to be boarded and they just can't handle it. I don't like to do it though. It's one of the reasons when I do training and boarding over here at my facility. A lot of times I get some dogs that are just fully anxious. I mean, there's actually one here right now. You can't even hear him at all anymore. He goes in a crate and he starts screaming. Um, but I don't always like to do the medication because it it's not the same dog. They're just highly medicated. It's like if I had to go to a hotel, and for me to go to the hotel I had to be on morphine. It's kind of the same principle in my mind, but yes, sometimes it's safety issues. But again, I wouldn't if I had to for an emergency purpose or a quick fix for like a 1-2 time thing. Yes, I would suggest yes you can medicate, but I'd want to work more on the anxiety and fixing the dog's anxiety so that you don't have to do that anymore. Um, what kind of anxiety was it? It was just high energy and anxiety. Okay, so the dog has high energy. I talked a little bit about this earlier. It's about the calmness and teaching your dog how to be calm. I have a couple of very high energy dogs myself, but they also know how to be calm when they have to be. Um, and we start by the way they walk out of a kennel or a crate, the way we feed them. We start teaching them how to be calm in everyday life. So that way, when those high energy points come, they're actually calmer and a lot less stressed out. Anxiety comes because a lot of times the dogs they don't feel like they have a clear alpha role. You can be a dog's best friend and have a great relationship and not be alpha. But you want to make sure that dog has an alpha because they get anxiety, they get stressed, they have other issues that just cannot be totally contained unless you teach them how to deal with it. So what happens is that when I have a dog that's completely just full of anxiety and issues, I'm gonna correct. Sometimes anxiety you can't fully correct. Sometimes you have to just get them out of it for a quick second and give them different behavior. But if you go up to that dog that's full of anxiety and say, "Oh, it's okay. Don't worry. It's okay." You're telling that dog to be afraid. You're telling that dog to keep doing what it's doing and have high anxiety. You have to make sure that you're not doing that. We want to give a quick correction, either a little pop on the leash, not by popping the butt, just a little quick jerk on the leash. Tell them no, and either start walking with them, or make them sit, or make them do something else to get their mindset off of whatever the anxiety is, whatever the stressor is. Make them think something completely different to get them to that point. But again, if the boarding place is suggesting something, if you absolutely have to, so you can go on vacation and stuff like that, yes, I do it every once in a blue moon. But again, I'd want to work on the dog's anxiety first before I ever truly have to do that too much. Okay, another question that came in. How do you deter a puppy from eating poop? Well, that's a good question, but it kind of also depends on where the poop is. I mean, if it's pooping in its kennel and it's eating the poop, we've conditioned the dog to some of that. It also depends how old the dog is. So if I have a puppy that's under 5 months old and it's eating its own poop, either I didn't do what I was supposed to by taking it out soon enough, or I wasn't, or I fussed at the dog to too young of an age. I created the dog to say, "Oh, I did this. I got to eat it. I got to hide it real quick." So we have to pick it up quickly. We have to correct. In the instance, like if you know the dog's gonna eat poop, or say if you see the dog about, you have to correct before it touches the poop. And a correction could just be a loud clap with your hands and the word no. You basically want to startle the dog for a minute. So what happens is it goes for the poop, you say no and clap, and the dog's like, "Oh shoot, I don't know what that was." And we do that each time the dog gets startled. They're not going to want to go to that poop anymore. If it was in the yard, we need to pick it up and we need to go ahead and hide, just quickly get it up so the dog doesn't want to go eat it. But typically, when a dog normally eats the poop, it is outside. I mean, it's inside, or it's in a kennel, and we created behavior by not explaining to the dog, one, it's not okay, or we didn't clean it up fast enough, or we fussed at the dog at a too young of an age. Again, 5 months and under, a dog cannot hold his bladder at all. It's just like a toddler. I mean, an infant. We put diapers on our infants, and we don't fuss at them for pooping in it. So we want to make sure that we don't fuss at the dog when they're real young. Potty training always with me starts the second the dog comes, only by me taking it out constantly and showing again the dog how to react. If it's an older dog eating poop, we have to correct as much as possible. There are some things that called like potty mouth that you can give a dog that when the poop comes out, it does not taste good for them. But that is what I call a last resort, and it doesn't always work on some dogs. Some dogs still like to eat it. So we want to give a quick correction and explain to them that's not acceptable. Typically, I would say a loud noise, the word no, or again, if you have a leash on the dog, a quick little leash pop. It's a puppy. I wouldn't always suggest a leash pop because they do have they are a puppy and it's very soft around their neck and things like that. Would you suggest a supplement? Like I said, there was some supplements you could do. I think one of them was potty mouth or something like that I knew of years ago. I don't remember what any of them are anymore because I typically try to correct and get it out the behavior out of it completely. I just don't want to have it in general. There are supplements that work. Which one I honestly could not tell you. I'd have to actually contact one of my friends who's actually one of my best friends. He's a veterinarian. Me and him congregate and talk about things like that often. But I mean, that one I kind of vaguely remember that brand. It might be a good one. But like I said, you can always ask the vet about the supplement ones. But again, correct. Tell them that's not acceptable so they can understand different things. Yeah. So I mean, there's different. That's the only way I would do is correct it. I mean, there's nothing else I would personally do. I've had dogs that would just not stop. The owners had to send the dogs to me, and we got it corrected, and they don't do it anymore. And come to find out, it was us as people again creating the behaviors. We always remember any behaviors that we put into a dog. So let me rephrase that. So if I have a young dog and it's little right now, I'm not gonna look. I'm not, and I know it's gonna be a big dog. I'm not gonna go ahead and say, "Hey, come get on my lap," or "Hey, I'm gonna hold you all the time," or have these other things. I am gonna teach you from a puppy how I want it to act as a big dog. If we take this any dog, even if it's a big dog coming in the house for the first time, the second it's there, I'm gonna go ahead and correct it. If she has them crated, but she doesn't make it home in time to correct. That's again, it's a hard one. It's one of those things that we have to put time in. Apparently, the dog has had some issues with this of pooping in the crate. They do have some crates out there. They're a little bit more expensive. But the tray is, you put the dog in the crate and there's some other wires that go across the bottom. So the poop and stuff straight underneath the dog into one of the crate pans and puppy pads and things like that. That would be another option. But if you're not there to correct, it's not going to fix anything. You have to, with any dog, you have to fix it in the moment. So whenever she's home, she needs to correct it. When she's not there, it's a little bit harder to do. That's why I say I always have to, when it comes to issues like this, is why sometimes people send the dogs to me, because they don't have the full time to sit there and feed them and walk them. So the other question I have is that if the dog's being crated at home and she doesn't have time to get the dog home or get home to correct the dog, here's the issue: is the dog being free fed? If the dog's being free fed, that means the dog has food all day long. What she should do is feed the dog once in the morning, once in the evening. By doing this, you have a better atmosphere and understanding when the dog has to poop. So if I give the dog food 4 o'clock in the morning, 30 minutes or so after that, I'm like, everybody's different. Every dog's different. You typically 30 minutes to an hour, or even within the first hour, the dog's gonna have to poop. You understand when the dog has to poop. You get a routine down. So you feed them, they eat the food, they go poop. Or you feed them, they don't eat all their food, you take the food away. You do not leave it there all day. Because again, you're going to create a behavior. Next time you feed them like that, they're going to eat all their food. Go ahead and bring them outside, let them use the bathroom. Then you put them back in the crate, and then you go to work. When you come back, you walk them, you feed them, they poop, and you're good. What's going to happen is it's going to create a bodily response to have the dog poop basically on command in a way, but like you'll have a time frame when the dog's going to have to go to the bathroom. That is the other way I would suggest to do it. That's one of the reasons I don't free feed, because if I free feed and I feed the dog and I leave the food out all day long and has access to that food, it's just going to eventually poop. It's going to eat all the food when it wants to, and there's going to be poop in the house. The dog's going to have to not be able to hold it. I would much rather, if I have to leave, the dog be able to hold their bladder and hold their bowel movements. And by feeding this way, it's typically a little bit better in that aspect. Another question: my anxious dog also has separation anxiety. Would working on his anxiety, like you suggested, also help with this? If I leave the house or the room, he will whine and bark. A lot of that I suggested will help. I'm not saying that'll cure that either. Separation anxiety means that the dog just can't handle being away from you, and sometimes we again go ahead and the way we treat the dog creates a lot of the separation anxiety. When a dog has very bad separation anxiety, even in my training processes, I tell people, the dog, once you leave to go to work, don't tell the dog goodbye. Don't make it a big ordeal. Because what happens if once you make that a big ordeal, the dog's like, oh, I'm just going to leave. They're leaving. I'm going to freak out. I don't want them to leave. I want it to be a daily routine that means nothing. I mean, I could put them in a crate and I can go outside, check the mail, and put them back. Come out and let them out again. And I will do that periodically with a dog. I will take them out. They'll be playing. We're having fun. I'll be like, oh, put them up. I'm going outside, even for just a minute or two. That way it's a daily thing. So they don't ever really realize when I'm leaving. Because if you make a big ordeal, they're going to have anxiety about it. They're going to say, oh no, they're leaving again. I'm leaving it again. I'm going to be in this crate for hours, or I'm going to be in this house for hours. We want to make it to where the dog it doesn't matter to them. Like it's nothing. So we don't tell them bye when we leave. We don't make it a big ordeal. And we also do not make it a big ordeal when we come home. The first thing I could do to tell you to do is ignore the dog. When you come home for about 10 to 30 minutes, ignore the dog. Then go look at it, take it out and walk it. Then go play with the dog. Because again, you don't want that anxiety to be high. Oh, they're coming back, and they're getting stressed out, or they're getting anxious, and it's causing even more anxiety. You want them to always think that it's no big deal. So again, sometimes I'll watch TV, and I normally like my dog's by me or something, but I'll put the dog in the crate. I'll be in the room, or I'll go in the other room, and nobody else will be in that room with the dog. I'm teaching the dog that separation anxiety is okay. Sometimes they will whine, they will holler, they will have issues. I'm going to ignore it. If it gets to a point where, let's say, an e-collar or a tool has to be involved, we can do that too. But I always suggest before you move to any tools, we try other ways. And when it comes to the tools, do not do it on your own. Please either call me or a very good, highly professional person that knows how to use those things correctly, because 9 out of 10 people do not know how to use those correctly at all. So I hope that kind of helps and answer some of your questions. If you have more questions, again, or need to talk more in depth, and none of this is working, let me know, and we'll set up a time to talk, or something else. Um, it's getting close to time. I have a couple more minutes. If anybody has another question, really quickly, to I can answer, I'll be more than happy to. But in the meantime, go ahead. If you don't follow us on our Facebook page, go ahead and follow us. We typically try to give out advice. We try to do as much as we can for everybody. Like us and follow us on there, and we'll help you with anything we can. It's one of the ways that we go ahead and take care of basically the dog. We're working on a podcast that's hopefully going to come out. Don't know when yet. We're working on lots of different things right now to be able to help and give a little bit of free stuff out there like this to kind of help everybody out. Because honestly, right now in this world, not everybody has the money to hire people and do things. Yes, this is how I make a living, but we're in it for the dogs and in it for the people and everything as well. Again, thank y'all all for showing up and asking questions. This has been a great interaction, and I'm hoping we'll have many more to come. Thank y'all. Have a great evening.